Hello, in case you don't know me, I'm Lori Buckley, school-based occupational therapist. I just wanted to do a little in-service for you on handwriting readiness. I've done this type of presentation for other teachers and preschool teachers and staff, and they've found it be helpful, so hopefully you will too. So first, I'm just going to briefly go over what we're going to discuss today. I have some handouts, and you can follow along with me on the handout. Most everything is already on there. So first I'm going to talk about the developmental components that influence handwriting, important foundations for writing. What factors or skills are important for kids to learn how to write, and then give some suggestions for your students and for you. So the ability to write is a complex and process and one of the most highest forms of expression. So what exactly is involved in the ability to write? All the following factors are important factors in order to learn to write, and I'll go over them briefly. First, cognitive function. Next, language. Then, psychosocial function. And last, sensory motor function. Those are things like sensory motor, fine motor, visual perception. I'll go into those in more detail because as an OT, that's my area of expertise. So first of all, what sensory motor functions are involved? Which ones are the most important foundations for writing? This is all on this handout, on this chart, and it's labeled important foundations for writing. So first, proprioception and kinesthetic. This is the perception of our hand and body movement and position, the awareness of our body position. Well, why is that important? Because without adequate input from the system, you might see a kid with a tight pencil grasp, wringing their hands, they fatigue easily. So I listed on this handout some activities you can do with children to work on this skill on a daily basis. And all these activities are great to do with all the kids, not just the ones that are struggling. So like for instance, weight-bearing activities, like crawling, crab walking, bear walking, wheelbarrow walking, push-ups, or resistance activities like anything where you're pushing or pulling, or heavy lifting. Of course, keep in mind how old they are and their strength. There are more suggestions on your handout. Another important foundation for writing is called bilateral integration. This is the use of the two sides of the body together in a coordinated manner. So good bilateral integration or coordination is an indicator that both sides of the brain are communicating effectively with each other and sharing information. When a child has difficulty in this area, you might see that their non-writing hand is not active. They won't hold the paper with that helper hand. They may need lots of reminders for that. They also might struggle with cutting, with guiding and holding the paper with their other hand, with their helper hand, that kind of thing. Some activities you can do in preschool to work on that. Bilateral integration are like blowing bubbles. You're holding the bubbles with the bottle with one hand and holding the wand with the other hand. Stringing beads or popcorn or buttons or cereal. Pouring in a funnel. Picking petals off a flower, holding the flower with the other hand. Using stencils on an easel. Easel makes it even harder. You have to hold the stencil with one hand and trace with the other. Or tracing your hand. Tossing a ball. Clapping games. Opening and closing plastic eggs. Hammering golf tees into floral foam. Tearing paper. That kind of stuff. Also, crossing midline is another important skill related, and it's related to bilateral coordination. Crossing the midline is really the ability to spontaneously cross over the middle of the midline of the body during motor completion or functional tasks, like moving one hand, foot, or eye into the space of the other hand, foot, or eye. For example, some of the things that involve crossing midline are sitting cross-legged, crisscross applesauce, scratching your opposite elbow, successfully crossing lines to draw a cross without switching hands, and eventually reading right to left to right involves crossing midline. Babies and toddlers use both hands equally and initiate picking up or interacting with an object with whichever hand is closer. So if an object's on the right side, they'll likely use the right hand to pick it up. If it's on the left side, they'll likely use their left hand to pick it up and grasp it. But by about 3 years old, they typically should have mastered the skill of crossing midline. So establishing dominance, hand dominance, like a worker hand versus a helper hand, is an indicator that the brain is maturing, and lateralization, or developing a hand dominance, is occurring. This is strongly correlated with the ability to cross midline. A child who avoids crossing midline can have difficulty coordinating both sides of the body, and oftentimes have difficulty with establishing hand dominance. And they tend to use alternate hand use when coloring or writing, eating or throwing, that kind of thing. So here are some activities to work on crossing midline. These are all in your handout again. You can have them play with sand, scooping sand from one side of the body and putting it in a bucket on the opposite side, without switching hands, in the opposite way too. Throwing, kicking a ball to targets to the right and the left. Playing Simon Says, like touch your left knee to your right hand, or put your right hand on your left shoulder. Most kids that age at preschool don't know right and left, but you can teach that too. But you can model, touching your right hand to your left shoulder and have them imitate you. Another thing you can do to work on crossing midline is with puzzles. You put the puzzle pieces where you have to reach them and force them to cross midline to grab the puzzle pieces, crossing over. Card matching, you spread the cards out and only use one hand to pick them up. Clapping games that involve crossing midline. Also participate in musical circle games. Certain musical games encourage children to maintain rhythm, which is a super important skill too, and cross the midline. Another thing you can do is play hot potato in a circle, but they must hold the ball or the hot potato with both hands, 2 hands at all times, and pass it with both hands, so they're crossing midline. Another one is to dance the hokey pokey. So next is posture and balance. Appropriate posture, upright, comfortable posture, provides a child with the general stability that's necessary for those skilled arm movements, such as writing. So activities that work on this to help develop those postural muscles, you can work on lots of gross motor play. Things like climbing, crawling through a tunnel, animal walks, jumping, swinging, standing on 1 feet, hopping, and yoga postures. So next, another important developmental component of handwriting is shoulder and wrist stability and mobility. This is important because it allows our arm to move across the paper when writing. The wrist isn't floppy or bent, and it allows the finger muscles to move the pencil. To help work on this, you can have the kids do animal walks, like I said before, crab walking, bear walking, army crawl, wheelbarrow walking. I do have lots of handouts, by the way, on different animal walks, in case you're interested, although there's so much on the internet these days that you can search for. Also, doing activities on a vertical surface, like using an easel, a chalkboard, flannel boards, sticker games, and letter and number magnets on a refrigerator. Those activities can be used to strengthen the upper body while standing. Also try lying on their tummy time, with their arms propped up on their forearms to read books or color or do puzzles. That on your tummy time position strengthens their arms, their necks, and their postural muscles. Or you can play games like tug of war, wheelbarrow walking, and use playground equipment like the climbing equipment and the monkey bars. How long can you hold on to the monkey bars, that kind of thing. So next, tactile or touch. This system gives our brain feedback of the shape of the pencil, the paper, and the writing surface. And also it gives you them a sense of where their body is being touched by others in the classroom. When a child has difficulty in this area, they might be extra sensitive to touch, or maybe their sense of touch isn't accurate enough, or both. You might see kids having poor legibility of letters later on. or they're distractible or have difficulty paying attention because they have such an aversion to light or unexpected touch, or seek it out too much, or both. This section on the touch part and the sensory piece could be a whole other in-service on sensory processing and its impact in school, but I'll just stay brief on this subject for now. So here are some activities that you can do to help with this. Have them play with a variety of textures, so use those sensory tables a lot, and they're fun too. Also coloring with textured boards behind the paper. You can also use shaving cream or other slippery textures on the easel or table, or different textured Play-Doh. If you have any questions about how to help kids with this, feel free to let me know, or any of this. Next, motor planning. This involves sequencing motor actions. Motor planning is the ability to learn new motor tasks, and writing is a new motor task. We need appropriate motor planning in order to form letters, shapes, and words. Kids with problems with motor planning will often show slow, labored handwriting because they have a hard time remembering how to form the letters. They might have awkward grasp because they can't remember how to hold the pencil every time. They might have an awkward way of holding the scissors because they can't remember how to hold the scissors. And they also can resist change a lot. I see lots and lots of kids, especially the ones who receive OT services, who have difficulty with motor planning. They need lots and lots and lots of repetition and modeling from the adult, and practice on how to make shapes, and later on how to make letters, and need lots of practice and modeling from an adult, and verbal cues on how to hold scissors and cut. So some activities to help work on that motor planning piece are things like Simon Says, doing obstacle courses, that also works on doing multiple steps, tossing beanbags into baskets, moving on paper plates, like you skate on paper plates with the plates as your skate, playing ball toss games, play indoor hopscotch or outdoor hopscotch. You can also play Copy Me, where the teacher models different postures and the kids imitate, and then you can incorporate crossing midline in that as well. So next, fine motor or hand skills. First, they need appropriate thumb development. The thumb is used to grip the pencil opposite to the first two fingertips, like this, and leave an open web space. When a child lacks that proper thumb development, I see this a lot in kindergarten through high school these days in typical kids, in all kids. You might see a poor pencil grip, their web space might be closed, they might have difficulty manipulating the pencil with their fingers and their thumb because they don't have that thumb development early on. That's hard, and it gets tiring for them as they have to write more and more in upper grades. Next, they need the development of hand arches. We have several natural arches in our hands. They're important for shaping the hand while we hold the pencil, and allow the fingers to make those skilled movements when we're writing, coloring. Next, in-hand manipulation. That's defined as the adjustment of an object within the hands after grasp. So here's an example of in-hand manipulation. The ability to take this penny and put it from my fingertips to my palm and hide it in there, and call that squirreling. Or the opposite, starts in the palm and use the fingers to bring it to your fingertips without using the other hand, without using your body. Another example of in-hand manipulation is rotate a marker or a pencil into the position to write, like that. So you pick it up and you have to manipulate it within your hand to get it ready to write. Next, the separation of the sides of the hand. So when we hold a crayon, we use our pointer finger, our middle finger, and our thumb to manipulate the pencil. Our ring and our pinky finger are supposed to stabilize the hand when we write and rest when we write. So it's the separation of these two sides of the hand. So some activities that work on all these fine motor skills that I just mentioned, again, those are listed on your handout, like placing small objects into small containers, placing cotton balls into small containers, using tongs to pick up objects and sort objects, using Play-Doh, clothespin activities where you're pinching, cutting, snipping paper strengthens your fine motor skills, coloring, painting with water on a sidewalk or chalkboard, finger painting, painting with Q-tips, doing finger plays with the kids and having them do it, playing with Legos, pegboards, squirters or water bottles, using these 3 fingers that you use to hold a crayon or a pencil, using basters or stamps, or squeezing sponges or washcloths out, crinkling a paper into a ball in your hand. And of course, those activities are just the beginning. Yeah, there's so many more. Okay, so next, eye-hand coordination. Our eye movements guide the action of our hand during writing tasks. Some activities to work on this skill are like rolling or throwing and catching large-sized balls. If they struggle with balls, you can have them catch stuffed animals first. Also playing balloon volleyball, scarf toss and catch, drawing and scribbling works on the eye-hand coordination as well. Coloring simple shapes, using paint with water books. The colors magically appear, it's cool. And pouring, ladling, and spooning soapy water into different size containers at the kitchen sink or the sensory table. And laterality, as I mentioned before, this is the superiority of skill and function of one hand over the other for writing. The ability to establish a dominant hand for fine motor activities is important. But please note that switching hands is a part of normal child development and shouldn't be construed as a problem at the preschool level, but it is still important for them to do lots of two-handed bilateral coordination activities like stringing beads of different sizes and all those other bilateral coordination activities I mentioned earlier. Lacing boards, practicing opening food packages with 2 hands, that kind of thing, and doing lots of crossing midline activities. Another important developmental component of handwriting is visual perceptual skills. So I'll briefly go over that. It's on your handout still. First, visual memory. Can they recall the shape and form of letters? Next, visual discrimination. This refers to a child's ability to differentiate between objects and forms. Next, spatial organization. This influences the relationship between letters, words, and sentences on a page. Position in space. Do they recognize a letter or shape in any position? If it's upside down or if it's on its side. So some activities to work on these visual perceptual skills. So one thing is you can fill a bag with different shapes like squares or triangles and have them stick their hand in the bag, in that feely bag, without looking. And then they have to identify the shape that they feel inside the feely bag. This is also a great activity for recognizing and labeling shapes. Or you can say, reach in there and find a square. Or show them a square and say, find this, find the square. And then they feel it without looking and find it. Another activity is to use construction blocks. You can put a few together in a certain way and then have them copy the sequence that you did or the color sequence that you did. Or matching card games, I Spy games. Another suggestion is when you're looking in a storybook, when you're reading a story, you can say, I see something that's brown, red, and blue, and ask the kids to identify what you're looking at. Another idea, find a picture book with busy pictures. Ask your child to look at the picture for a while, and then close the book, and then tell me about the picture. This works on their visual memory. See what they remember. Another visual memory game, you can place like 5 small objects, familiar objects like a paper clip, a pencil, a crayon, that kind of thing, out in front of the child. Ask them to look away while you remove one object. And then they look again and tell you what object was missing. If that's too hard to have like 5 objects, you can start with 2 objects, you can start with 3, go at the level of the child. Also puzzles. Where's Waldo? Another suggestion is to give a kid a bowl of mixed cereal or pasta and sort them out into muffin trays or egg trays according to their shape or their color. Okay, so we can see that there are a lot of skills involved with learning how to write letters, and it's sort of amazing that kids can do it. I'm amazed all the time. So I have lots of handouts. I'll show you my big pile. suggestions of activities to work on these kind of skills. So feel free to let me know if you're interested. And of course, the internet is a great resource as well. And also, I can help you try to figure out ways to make these activities easier or harder for kids depending on their needs. So just feel free to let me know. Okay, so on your handout, it talks about that research has indicated that before beginning to learn to write or print letters, a child should be able to do all the following in order to write effectively. First, they have to be able to use a dominant hand for fine motor activities. And again, please remember that at preschool level, if they're still switching hands, they haven't picked a dominant hand, that's just normal child development. It's not a concern at the preschool level. Okay, so the next thing that they say that before kids should be able to print letters, they should be able to cross the midline. Then the ability to copy the pre-writing shapes from the VMI test. Here it is, I have a handout. And it's all in developmental order on this handout, on your handout, of what shapes they should be able to copy. First, the vertical line, then a horizontal line, then a circle, then a cross, square, diagonal line, and an X. And I'll go over that more in detail in a minute. So lastly, in order to effectively write letters, they should be able to assume the proper posture and grip. Children should be taught how to hold markers and crayons. The crayon is a tool, and like many tools, it works and is used best when it's held correctly. But when kids begin writing before they're physically ready to write, without being taught how to hold the crayon or the pencil, they may develop an awkward, tight-fisted grasp. I see this a lot these days in elementary schools and on up. The children try so hard to hold on and make that pencil go. So, learning how to hold a crayon or marker correctly is the first pencil skill that you want for your children for comfort, speed, and neatness. So one way to teach them, I found a great video that models how to hold the writing utensil and uses a song, and it's from the Handwriting Without Tears program, by the way. I've had lots of teachers, kindergarten teachers and preschool teachers show the kids this video to the students over and over again, and then practice with adults helping them with the kids every day for a while, and it really, really helps to teach them how to hold that crayon correctly. Then you just keep reinforcing it every time they pick up a crayon or marker. At the preschool age, I would always recommend using crayons and small markers, not pencils. Their hands aren't ready for pencils yet. So, okay, I'm gonna get this video ready. Video on how to hold a crayon.
My thumb is bent, pointer points to the tip. Tall man uses his side. I tuck my last two fingers in and take them for a ride. Now I'm holding it right, but not too tight. Every finger knows what to do. That's the way to hold your crayon. Have fun.
So as I said, I've had teachers show that video and also just do it with the kids, and it's really, really been helpful. Practice picking up the crayon, making sure they're doing it correctly, and then drop the crayon and do it again. And do it every day for a while, and then they'll catch on pretty quickly. If you do use the video with the kids, I'd love to know how it's going. Let me know. Keep me updated. So changing to a better grip have wonderful long-term benefits, but changing habits once kids are in second and third grade and on up is very difficult. Children and adults will cling to a bad habit, as we know. I was even trying to help this kindergartner one time who had an awkward grasp on her pencil, a kindergartner, and she told me, I've been holding it this way since preschool. It's really hard to change. So for the little kids, our little 3, 4, and 5-year-olds have small hands. So a short crayon like this, where's my short crayon? Oh, here it is easier to control. A broken crayon, see how I broke it. With little hands, it's harder for their fingers and hand to control a big pencil like this, so it requires more work for their hands, and you see this a lot, using all their fingers to try to hold on to it. The more work that's required, the more fingers they try to use on it. Little 3 to 5-year-old hands need little crayons or markers. They have the little pipsqueak markers too, but broken crayons. They can only use their fingertips with this broken crayon to hold on to it. But again, we're still showing them how to hold this crayon with that song and just modeling and everything. I did want to share this with you. They did a research study that looked at the use of broken crayons like this with 4 and 5-year-old children with developmental disabilities or delays. They found that the technique of using broken crayons had a significant influence in the formation of a tripod or a mature grasp, more than children were not provided with the broken crayons. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about visual motor skills. That's basically the ability to copy figures and shapes. So I mentioned that one of the prerequisites for being able to write letters is to be able to copy the pre-writing shapes. So in your handout, on the back page, I listed each pre-writing shape and what age kids are typically able to copy that shape, and they're all in developmental order. So kids can practice this pre-writing shapes using multisensory tools like shaving cream, like in a mirror or a wall, so that's a vertical surface again, using paint, rainbow writing, like doing it in different colors, drawing shapes in different mediums like sand or flour or sugar or rice on a vertical surface like a cookie sheet, practicing the shapes on a vertical surface like an easel or a chalkboard. If you have a child that's struggling with making these shapes and they should be doing them by that age, just feel free to chat with me. I can give you some suggestions on some verbal or visual cues that might be helpful for them in particular. Even if they don't get OT services, I'm happy to be a resource for you, and that's part of my job. So you can look at the handout for more suggestions. Another great resource that I've found preschool teachers have found helpful is Miss Marnie, TV teacher. She's an OT like me, and her videos are great. The next thing I want to talk about briefly was drawing a person. Have you heard of Matman? I know definitely some of you have and have used him and know how awesome he is. But in case you're not familiar, it's a great activity from the Hand Art That Tears program again, that has a song and uses manipulatives to learn how to draw or make a person with all the body parts in the correct places. The kids and the adults love it. I've done it in kindergarten classes, preschool classes, and then the teachers learn how to do it, and then they do it with the kids several times a week, and it really helps, and the kids love it, ask for it over and over and over again. One last thing I wanted to mention was the importance of doing lots of activities on a vertical surface. Because it works on your shoulder and your elbow stability, bilateral coordination, crossing midline, wrist extension, which helps with the pencil grasp, visual attention, and eye-hand coordination, spatial awareness, core posture, strength, all that good stuff, a lot of stuff. So I listed some activities that work on a vertical surface, like painting and finger painting, coloring, drawing on an easel or a chalkboard. Preschool kids should be doing these kind of activities as much as possible on a vertical surface. Also, you can make your own removable Lego wall on a vertical surface. Not only is it fun, but it's also great for all those skills that I mentioned. Also, you can play with magnets on the easel, play with shaving cream or fingerprint on an easel, play with felt shapes or pictures on a felt board on a vertical surface, drawing color with chalk on a chalkboard, and I would recommend breaking the chalkboard, making it small to work on that grip. Writing with dry erase markers or window markers on a window or a hanging mirror. And as mentioned, I have lots of handouts with other suggestions. And also feel free to send some handouts to parents, whichever ones would be appropriate for those kids and parents. Also, using scissors correctly and holding them correctly with your thumb up strengthens your grasp muscles. Some things to remember about scissor skills. Children are usually ready to begin scissor use around the age 4. And we can get the children used to holding and using scissors by snipping straws. Snip, snip, snip. Snipping comes first. And snipping Play-Doh, snakes. You can make snakes and snip, snip, snip. And encouraging that thumb up position when they're cutting. So I made a video. This is one that I made to help students learn how to hold the scissors. Again, I showed it to the kids and practiced, and showed the kids the video the next time and practiced. I found that using this video consistently is helpful for the kids learning how to hold the scissors correctly with their thumb up, especially those kids who are struggling with it, like the ones with motor planning difficulties. So I'll show you the video. I made this video actually for a student that I had in first grade with high functioning autism, and he could not remember how to hold those scissors. This really helped. So,
this is how you pick up scissors. This is the little hole. This is the big hole. This is your thumb. Your thumb goes in the little hole. Your fingers go in the big hole. Thumb up to cut. My thumb is up. We're ready to cut.
so if you guys start using these videos with your kids, please feel free to let me know and give me feedback back on how they do with them. I can always make new videos to make them more appropriate for and better for the kids and for the teacher. And I also have lots of handouts, of course, on fun ways to practice scissor skills. Let me know if you're interested. Practicing scissor skills not only helps strengthen their hands and fingers, but also works on bilateral coordination and visual motor skills. So that is about it for this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Thank you.